This story took place at the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century. It tells of an unusual and strange marriage where family ties turned into a real spectacle. Henry Paget, an eccentric aristocrat, was obsessed with jewelry and theatricality. His union with Lillian, which seemed doomed from the start, turned into a series of mysterious rituals where the wife became a living mannequin for decorations. What happened next? You'll find out below. Henry and Lillian had been inseparable since childhood. First cousins, they grew up in the historic Place Neuilly estate, which belonged to the noble marquises of Anglesey. Their childhood was carefree, filled with games and fairy tales told by their devoted nannies and governesses. But their parents had already decided their fate. They were to marry. At the time, it was common practice to wed relatives to preserve the family's wealth and social status. So, from a young age, Henry and Lillian's future was set. They were destined to become husband and wife. Born in 1875, Henry stood out among aristocratic children from an early age. Rumors circulated that his striking mother, Lady Blanche, had broken her marital vows, and that the boy's true father was a French actor. However, Lady Blanche took all her secrets to the grave, and soon a cold and distant stepmother moved into the estate. He was raised by Nanny Nan and governess Miss Baker, who adored him. They indulged his every whim. If he read about the lives of Turkish sultans, they sewed him oriental robes. If he became fascinated with the Tudors, they created a 16th century English court costume for him. Henry had a special passion for jewelry. He would spend hours admiring his mother's ornaments, mesmerized by the sparkle of the stones. But after Lady Blanche's death, his stepmother took possession of them, and one day, when Henry saw familiar earrings on her, he shouted, "Those are not yours!" His outburst was ignored, and soon Henry was sent to an elite school, Eton College in Windsor, England. Henry's father, a strict and authoritative man, hoped to raise his son as a worthy successor to the family line. He wanted him to be strong, decisive, and masculine. However, Henry's teachers reported that the boy was more interested in art and theater than in military service or estate management. After Eton, he was sent to serve in the Prince of Wales's regiment, but Henry was far more captivated by dancing and the theater than by military discipline. His behavior irritated his father, who eventually made a firm decision. He must marry immediately. Lillian, a gentle and shy young woman, was stunned by the sudden change in her fate. She was summoned to the estate where she was to become Henry's bride. They had played together as children, and now she struggled to see him as a husband. But on January 20th, 1898, they were married. On their wedding night, Lillian encountered her husband's bizarre behavior. After the reception, Henry whispered to her, "Take everything off and wait for me." She obeyed, sitting still in anticipation. Soon he entered the room, carrying a massive jewelry box. Carefully and slowly, he began placing necklaces, earrings, and bracelets on her. This lasted for an hour, then another. Lillian had no idea what was happening, but when she shifted slightly, Henry hissed sharply, "Don't move!" By the third hour, Henry finally yawned with satisfaction. "I'm tired. Sleep." He left, and the servants began removing the jewelry from the frozen Lillian. The next morning, Henry behaved as if nothing unusual had happened. He suggested a walk, and then they went into town. Lillian convinced herself that the strange night had been a misunderstanding, but the next night the same thing happened again. During the day, her husband was attentive and caring. He showered Lillian with gifts and granted her every wish. If she so much as mentioned a pretty gold chain in a shop window, he immediately bought the entire collection. It seemed as if he worshipped not Lillian herself, but the act of adorning her with jewelry. But every night, the strange rituals resumed. He would spend hours laying out his treasures on her as if she were a living mannequin. Lillian tried to understand her husband, but he remained an enigma. He was both childish and stubborn, obsessed with grandeur and theatricality. One day he yelled at the servants so fiercely that his voice broke into a falsetto. Lillian realized that her fears were justified. She refused to take part in his nighttime rituals. "He's strange. He frightens me," she whispered to her reflection in the mirror. After 6 weeks, she reached her limit. She left the estate, declaring that she could no longer endure the marriage. Henry didn't try to stop her. If not Lillian, then someone else could take part in his jewel-laying ceremonies. That autumn, Henry inherited his father's title and fortune. He became known as the Dancing Marquess due to his eccentric behavior, love of costumes, and theater. Once he appeared at a ball wearing enormous, delicate butterfly wings, causing gasps and laughter. He continued to buy jewels in absurd quantities. Meanwhile, Lillian filed for divorce. Since their marriage had never been consummated, she was able to have it annulled. In 1909, she married banker John Gray Gilliatt and had 3 children, finding true happiness. Henry, however, continued to live lavishly until his fortune began to collapse. One day, he had £50,000 worth of jewelry stolen and even sought help from Arthur Conan Doyle to find it. But fate was relentless. By 1905, his debts had reached £544,000. On March 14th of that same year, Henry died at the age of 29. His title passed to his cousin, who also inherited his enormous debts. The Plasnewid estate fell into decline. Thus ended the story of Henry, a man surrounded by luxury yet unable to find happiness or love in it. Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your opinion. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next fascinating story. See you soon!